We'll start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart.
Here.
Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dahlke.
Here.
Amber Kirsting.
Here.
Emily Hines.
Here.
Michelle Dupree.
Here.
Angela Wall.
Here. We have a quorum. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under mission statement, the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed revisions to the agenda order? Seeing none, we will move on to community communications. Looks like we have two speakers tonight. First up is Josie Cohen.
I'm Josie Pillman, and I live in Knapp. Dr. Zadowski, board chair, and members of the board. Summer is a good time for the school district to evaluate and assess curriculum. I know here in Menomonie we want to have only the best for our children. I've been encouraged by what I am hearing in some other states. For example, in Oklahoma, the head of the state education department has proclaimed that every classroom in the state will have a copy of the Bible and have the 10 Commandments posted. More than that, the Bible would be taught in grades 5 through 12. Why? According to the Oklahoma Education Department, the Bible is a very important component to give us historical understanding of some of the key documents of our country. It is often quoted in the Federalist Papers and even the Constitution. It is also the basis for Western civilization and for our legal system. Civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. often quoted the Bible in his speeches and sermons. In short, to more accurately understand our history, one must be educated in the Bible. To those who cry out for a separation of church and state, I will remind us that constitutionally we must keep the state out of the church, but not the church out of the state. There can be no establishment of religion. For example, no one religion stands above another. However, it was never intended that the Bible should not be taught in the public schools, as is the present policy in many school districts. Because the Bible is a wholesome, inspired, and true book, I believe that if it is taught, the standard of education will increase by many metrics. We will see higher academic achievements, more creativity, better behavior and attitudes, higher moral standards, etc. It will go a long way to help all our students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. When biblical truth renews the mind, behavior is reformed, students are educated, and teachers are encouraged. We all win. School board, I would ask you to suggest to Mr. Brian Seguin that he look into a Bible curriculum for the SDMA for the next school year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And our next speaker is Mike Cooper.
Good evening, Mike Cooper, B4627 453rd Avenue. Last Thursday, we celebrated the 4th of July. As you can tell by my appearance, I am a great believer in the founding of the greatest nation ever conceived by man. And in the spirit of the 4th of July, I thought you might like to go over the test that people applying for citizenship must pass. They are simple, straightforward questions. For example, you might want to try to answer these on your own. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Who was the first president? Who was president during World War I? What year was the Constitution written? What is the length of a senator's term? How many amendments are there in the Constitution? Which state does not border on Canada? Montana, Maine, North Dakota, Michigan, or Oregon? What country was the Louisiana Purchase made with? Which branch of the federal government is responsible for making laws? And finally, what are the 5 rights of the First Amendment? You should have no trouble getting them all right. For immigrants to pass, they must get 6 right. Only 30% of the natural U.S. citizens can pass that test. High school seniors are down to 3%. Yet again, reality rears its ugly head when the district is more focused on gender dysphoria, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fundamentals of reading, writing, arithmetic, and civics gets lost in the mix. Some years back, the educational focus was on critical thinking. Students not only were expected to know the 3 R's, but they were able to use them to solve different problems that come up in life. I do not hear anything about critical thinking anymore. You do have a STEM program, and amazingly, you still have an industrial technology program. Good for you. You need more. Let's get our students again focused on learning the fundamentals needed to be good citizens. They can reason, who can reason and decide for themselves what is the best way forward. Let's get 90% plus, not 3% passing the test. If the test scores start to improve, you just might find the public more willing to pass the levy. I hope you do not think that silence is acquiescence. The vote down of the levy should be a wake-up call for some circumspection. Use the powers of the lesser magistrate to do what is best for the students. Open lines of communications with parents and taxpayers. Make a big deal of open houses. Let people see what is being taught in the classroom. If there are issues, then resolve them so parents and taxpayers can be confident that you are doing a good job in preparing the students to take on the world. Leave parenting to the parents. Stick to teaching. Our students need teachers.
That's 3 minutes.
Not friends, parents, right, Al?
Agreed.
Rachel, if I could just follow up for a second. I'm sure Mr. Cooper got his information from some reputable source, but the 3% of high school students passing that test, I don't think that reflects what we do here in Menomonie. Brian, could you share just a little bit about what we do in terms of our civics test?
So I would have to go back and double check on the year that it went into effect. But in order to earn a high school diploma in the state of Wisconsin, all students are required to take and pass a citizenship test as part of their civics class.
Yeah,
And that's
with my
probably nationwide.
Yeah, with my son being a junior last year, I had the opportunity to work with him, help him study for his test, and I was happy he did real well, as did, I think, almost all of his classmates. But it's very similar to the questions that Mike talked about in his public comments. So yeah, it's probably some nationwide figure. I don't know if it's current or not, but in Menomonie, our students do take a test, and they need to pass that test in order to graduate from high school.
Thank you for that information. Next up, we have monthly employment reports.
This is just informational for the board at our regular meeting here, so unless there's any questions, it's for your information.
Any questions or discussions? Discussion. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Amber.
I second. Motion by Amber, second by Emily. We have tonight minutes for the regular board meeting of June 10th and the special board meeting of June 24th. Financial reports, general fund checks in the amount of $2,357,840.34, and cash receipts in the amount of $355,452.04 for June of 2024. No donations exceeding $1,000. We have the WIAA renewal that was presented at the last meeting, and the SCMA Education for Employment Plan, which we had presentation on at our last meeting. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, let's vote. Our motion passes unanimously. We have nothing on the personnel consent agenda this evening, so we can move on to the action agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the annual meeting agenda for publication.
So moved.
Great.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, second by Angela. We have the meeting agenda here for our approval. We have already discussed the date and time and location. We'll have our annual meeting Monday, August 26th at 6 p.m. in the high school tiered lecture hall. Any discussion on the agenda itself?
Are we having a regular board meeting that day?
We'll see what's on the board's docket. We probably will have a short special meeting before the annual meeting.
We often end up doing that if we need to approve some hires or approve a report or something pressing that can't wait until September. If there's no other questions or discussion about the annual meeting, let's vote to approve the agenda. And motion passes unanimously. All right, on to our discussion items. First up, we have our annual review of curriculum standards.
Assistant Superintendent Brian Seguin will go ahead and cover this for the board.
All right, so this is an annual report that comes before the board for new board members. Once a year, we have the opportunity to share publicly the standards that we use to base our instruction within the school district around. If you follow the link to the SDMA curriculum standards page, you'll see a list of each of our content areas or departments that are listed and the direct link to the standards that are used to oversee those. You'll notice this year there are a handful of content areas that have two different sets of standards. The state recently released updated standards within the area of career and technical education. So as part of the rollout plan, as we do that, we reference both sets of standards as we work our way through the transition to the updated ones. Included in the background, as far as public content, you can see those career and tech ed standards that are being updated or that have been updated and approved by the state. And the rest of those content area standards for career and tech ed will be released and then considered for adoption at the state level later this year ahead of next school year. Just a side note, the Wisconsin Career Readiness Standards were an update to a set of common career and tech ed standards. I had the opportunity to serve on the review and writing committee for that process and can speak to how intense the process of reviewing and updating standards are. For a real quick overview of those standards and that process, it was a combination of educators, business people, parents, and community members from throughout the state that had a hand in that process. So it took us about a year and a half to get through that process and aligns very closely with the work that the state is doing around academic and career planning as well. A couple of other things that are noted in here. You can see that there is also a link for the timeline for review of Wisconsin academic standards that goes out to, I believe, 2031. Typically, it's about a 6-year rolling process, and some updates will happen throughout that process as well. And then the state recommends a 3-phase implementation process when new standards are rolled out and adopted. So at this point, I'm happy to take any questions, but like I said, this is an annual process where we share those.
Brian, just for anybody following along or who might want to review these standards on their own, it's very simple to find them on the school district website. Just go to district information and there's a whole bunch of drop-down links, and then curriculum and instruction is one of those links. and that's where you can find the academic standards.
Brian, I have a question. I'm just curious to know what phase we are in the rollout of math and literacy.
So math and literacy, we would be in phase 3, which is where we're taking a look at assessment.
Brian, being part of the committee that was looking at the revision of standards, do you feel that there was a lot of input from public stakeholders on the revisions, or?
No, that's a great question. So I would say yes, from a standpoint that there was a lot of opportunity. I will say that at various stages, I would say the input and the feedback that we received from the communities throughout the state of Wisconsin varied based on where we were in that process. By the time we got to the final review of it, there wasn't a lot of suggested feedback because people had an opportunity. I'd have to go back and check, but I know there were 3 different opportunities along the way for public hearings as well as online feedback and listening sessions. I had an opportunity to participate and review that as part of the group.
I just want to make a comment about the links that Joe's referring to, not only on our website, but it's also on the public page of Board Docs for this evening, so anyone from the public can access that.
Any other question or discussion regarding the curriculum standards? All right. Next up, we have a review of our calendar of board reports.
So thank you to Jenny for putting this together, and as it says in the top, this is a tentative calendar, and certainly the reports, the scheduled reports changes over the year as we try to balance board meeting agendas, also capacity of the different staff members that have a hand in developing these reports. But this gives the board a general idea of the reports that will be coming over the next year. You can see there are many of them. I think it's 3 full pages worth of reports. But are there any additional reports or any directives that the board would like to give tonight related to the calendar?
I have a question. I think it is in October. We have a virtual education report, and I can't remember. Does that include like anybody who's taking a class that is not in the traditional classroom? So for example, like the alternative program, or anybody who's like independently enrolled in Wisconsin Virtual School, or like what is the, how much does that report encompass, I guess?
So the short answer is if it's a class that is offered and that one of our students through our partnership with WVS, Wisconsin Virtual School, would be included, whether they're a full-time virtual student or they're taking one class. That report will include numbers that reflect that combination of both full and part-time students. And it's at the middle school and high school level. But it would not, or I'm sorry, but it would not have students who are in our alternative high school participating face-to-face instruction. But if there is an alt-ed student who's taking a virtual class, their data will be reflected through that virtual class.
It would also not include a student who is not a Menomonie student taking it through a different virtual platform. So for instance, if someone was living in our community, homeschooled, but taking a virtual course not affiliated with our school district, that report would not include that.
Okay, that makes sense.
I just want to say thanks for putting this list together. It's really helpful and informative to look through the entire year of reports and kind of when to expect different sorts of material and the document to which to prepare for it, right? I noticed this in the public's part of Board Docs, which is great. And actually, I wonder if, we often get comments from people about, it'd be great if the district can look into this, or does the district have any data on such and such, and if there's a way to, and this is a tentative calendar, so you don't really want to like lay down as a calendar necessarily, but just kind of the rough timeline of the sorts of things that the board and the admin team look through, so that people are aware that these things are under consideration. We had a question, a month and a half ago about, is there a report on bullying? Well, yes, there is. It's down here on such and such line, right? So that I think might be a helpful point of discussion, maybe when there's public commentary.
Are you suggesting that this calendar would be somewhere that the public could easily access it? Or are you suggesting that these board members sort of remember to reference it?
I will certainly write down and to reference this and save the documents. I can check back on it. But also, I do think maybe if there's a way to present this in a way that is, that's publicly digestible, which this probably is. But yeah, just as a reference, if having it linked somewhere, maybe outside board docs, where it can be easily linked to if someone has a question, is there a report on such and such? Yes, here's the calendar. If you want to talk about that, this is a great day to come by, and talk about it. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I agree. It would be nice to have. I also need to remember to save it and make it easily findable for answering those types of questions.
We can definitely do that. Thanks for the suggestion.
Any other questions or discussions about what's on this report? I think, Joe did ask if we are looking for something else on here. This doesn't have to be exhaustive, of course, right? If at some point the board wants to know about something, we can certainly add to it. But.
Right, the board can always request a report, although I will say that when you look at this, you can see that. And I'm not saying that in a way of trying to avoid additional reports, but the point being is that many of these reports are done over weeks or even months and involving, multiple people at multiple levels. And I think a lot of times people don't recognize that. I think the board does, but I think some other people might not recognize that when we bring a report forward that, it's people having some sort of input. So it takes a while.
The other way this is particularly helpful is this schedule has been pretty consistent for several years. And if I think to myself, I would like to report on such and such, before I message you, I'll look at the calendar and then go to that meeting of last year and see what was the report there. It doesn't have, probably already had the information I was looking for. So it's really helpful.
That is also a really good point. It's a good shortcut to finding what you do board doc history. All right. Any other questions or discussions on the calendar? Cruising right along here tonight. We have our update on community engagement sessions and referendum exploration. So we have some notes from some of the meet and greet activities that have taken place over the last 2 weeks. We also have, we do have the updated schedule for what's coming up that has been updated just today, I think, is that correct? So if folks haven't looked at that in a while, now's a good time to open it. Yeah, are there, yeah, go ahead.
So I also have some notes from when Dominic and I were at the NAP July Festival weekend before last. I didn't have my notebook with me this week because I was away out of town, but I will transcribe those notes before the next meeting.
And I was also at the farmer's market this past weekend, and I have those too, but I'm going to be there next weekend, so I'll put them all together and have them for the next time.
Are there, for the folks who were participating in these meet and greets over the last couple of weeks, are there things you wanted to highlight or make sure to share? Or does anyone else have questions or what?
I was in a couple, even though my name wasn't on the calendar, because I was helping out when some SOS signals came our way. So I jumped in, and I'm really enjoying getting to hear all of the different perspectives in our community. Last Saturday, in particular, we had a strange location at the farmer's market, but we did, and my personality, I was able to lure people to our table. Which worked out very fine, because they did have something to say, and I could tell by looking at them that they did. So we did gather some just amazing feedback. One of which was a mother of a parent of a child with special needs that graduated 7 years ago and had just some heartfelt stories and still tears and still just was so exasperated but thrilled to have been heard. Like, we just really listened to her, even though it was 7 years beyond solving any problem. And she just loved that we were hearing her, truly hearing her. And some of the questions that the other person, if that person wants to mention, was following up on floored me, and they're great questions, and really, I think the parent walked away feeling very differently than when she happened upon us when I moved her to the table. And that happened in a few different cases. So I don't know if you want to elaborate,
One of an interesting conversation that happened that day as well was someone who spends a lot of time in other schools around the state, and I think kind of noticed the difference in success rates between probably capital referendums and operational referendums. And I think he had mentioned that some of the other schools had like videos of like teachers in spaces where like that the referendum was going to directly affect, like to be able to expand a choir room, or the maintenance employees, you know, showing what needed to be replaced in the boiler room or whatever. I was just really thinking about this because part of me was just like deeply frustrated that there was not what I felt like understanding of like the difference between the two, but I was thinking maybe instead of focusing on like educating that they're two separate things and like one is harder to pass and like fuels different things, that we still maybe, if we end up going to referendum again, that we still would maybe like market it that way. That yeah, like we don't get a fancy new building, but like here are like promo materials about this is like a program we have that we'll get to keep. Or, you know, especially with our smaller schools, if that's, you know, what's in the cards, like, you know, keeping them open or having them closed, like showing what's going on there. But that was just a very interesting like new perspective I gained just from listening to people who are in the ed world. I can attest, Michelle is very good at drawing people in to share, who like genuinely have things to share, but maybe are, you know, unsure. And I have felt a really overwhelming sense of like people feel like are very appreciative of us just listening. I think it's a really powerful thing. So I've enjoyed learning a lot, and it sparked a lot of different ideas.
So Paul?
Following up on what you just shared, was that person suggesting we perhaps might think about doing like videos or spaces to show folks like, yep, this is what this could impact, or, I mean, is that what they're asking for? Well, I think their perspective was that places that have passed referendums have done things like that, and we didn't have that. Not necessarily, you know, advising whether we should go ahead to do another one or not, but if we did, it should look a little different.
Just really bringing what that money was needed for and making it visible, like to the eye, not just in like graphs and charts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, which I think also is a lot more, I don't know if tangible is the right word, but now that we have the cut list, I think it helps focus that a little bit more.
Right. Because it's a more difficult thing to capture on a video, what we were looking for operations.
I sat with Angie, and she's the one that wrote the notes, so I appreciate that a lot, helping to listen and get those things down, so that's good. But the one thing that I hear over and over again, not just at these listening sessions, but people that have gone to them or seen me around and say, you know, that is a cool thing you guys are doing. And then when somebody comes up, they will ask, well, what are you guys doing here? What's the school board about? And I said, well, we want to hear from you. And they're like, really? So I think it's been a really good thing, and I think people are pretty excited about the fact that they get you. And that's kind of a heartwarming story that you told about the person from 7 years ago having a student and being able to come back and say something and feel heard. So I think that's all really good stuff. Thanks.
So we have a few more scheduled events throughout July. It looks like maybe y'all are still trying to nail down some dates with some of them if possible. I guess I wondered if we want to steer the conversation toward next steps, just with an eye on the calendar. We could at our next meeting on July 22nd, start the conversation about, or have a discussion item about what a potential referendum would be. And we wouldn't have to, we could have that discussion with then have the ability to have something official on the agenda in our first August meeting, which would allow us to be on a timeline to be on the November ballot. I think that even some of these that are already scheduled are out after July 22nd. But I guess I feel like we don't have to obviously stop listening. And we'll have had a lot of opportunity before then. I feel like in 2 weeks' time as a board, do we feel like we'll be in a good place to start that conversation about potential referendum? Lots of nods. No head shakes.
I guess one question is if we're going to really start focusing on having a real question that we will discuss timelines and details of, I guess it's really a question for Joe and Leah. You feel that you'd be in a position at that point to present, from the budgetary perspective, what you feel is realistic, and recommendations from that side of it, aside, distinct from the kind of political side, but really on the finance side.
Yeah, we have the audit right away in August. So much work was done for the past referendum, and then also the building of this year's budget. We have projections, and we continue to update those projections. Everyone needs to understand that everything is projection-based, and a lot of it is based on enrollment. So until we get to the third Friday of September, we really aren't going to know exactly what the budget is. The state aid estimate came out July 1st, and that was good news for the school district. The initial estimate estimates about 8% more in state aid. Before we celebrate though, that doesn't mean it's more revenue. It just means more of the revenue is going to come from the state instead of the local taxpayer. So it's not going to help with our operating budget at all. But yes, I think it's important, Quarles and Brady, the legal advisors, in terms of referendum and referendum ballots, we would need to be able to work with them. And August 23rd is kind of the drop dead. So I really think that first meeting in August or a special meeting shortly after that would be important. But yeah, I think, Leah, I don't know if you have any other comments on it, Leah, but I think we can certainly give the board what we have. Nothing has changed in the fact that we're anticipating a pretty significant deficit, a deficit that's going to continue to get worse. Exactly, how much is going to be the question, but there's little doubt that there's not enough revenue to meet the current expenses.
Indeed. And in particular on the issue of the state aid change, that presumably will affect mill rates, however, right? Since the total, right, because it's about the balance of funds.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, that's off of all the state schools, all their budgeted figures. So until the actual figures get done with everyone's audit, returned into DPI, then we'll actually know what the state aid cut will be. There's also a bit of an elephant in the state aid room this year too with the Milwaukee situation. The fact that their numbers did not get certified on time. Some people are anticipating that's going to provide even more state aid to the schools that are not in the Milwaukee School District. So it actually could be an advantageous time to go to referendum where the impact on the local tax rate could be lower than what it would have been projected a year ago.
Thanks.
The impact, sorry, just to clarify, like the impact wouldn't be lower, but the mill rate would be, the mill rate, so the starting mill rate without a referendum would be lower. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah, if you're comparing the school tax rate from one year to the next year, the increase having to do with the referendum, it would start from a lower spot.
Right, so folks would be looking at, even with the referendum, folks could potentially be looking at a lower school tax bill because of the state aid.
Yes, it definitely would be lower than it would be if the state aid was not increased.
Right. Okay.
On this agenda item with the meet and greet calendar, just before we do that entirely, are there other, this is being developed, are there other, the TBD dates at the bottom, are any of those known or desired so far that we can put on our calendars?
And at this point, I think we have to talk about if we want a little pause in August. A lot of people are not in town, and this has been a lot of hours in. We sure can push and fill some more in, but we also have the annual meeting, and if there's more referendum talk, maybe it's a good time to take August as a little breather and kind of look at the information that we've gathered and try and synthesize it a little bit from the notes. But what do you guys think? Should we try and tuck some more in, or?
I just have a couple comments. There's an edit, I gave you the wrong, is it Monday, July 15th instead of Tuesday? I have emailed the Speedway and Ludington Guard. I still haven't heard anything back. And I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know if there's a better way to reach out to individuals, or I could call too, but it might be nice to expand since we have been hitting the farmers market pretty heavily. I did hear back from the senior center. They're having the Mia Leisure Center, so that I think will be a really great opportunity. And then I was going to attend the Tumbling for Tots to get those families. But I'm fine with whatever the group decides, but just give you feedback on where we're at with hearing or not hearing from people.
I feel like I personally have the capacity for one or two more myself, and I don't know about others. I do agree with what Emily was just saying, that it'd be nice to expand, if we can get the Speedway, or make one of these urban homes materialize, getting a slightly different population we can fit in, I think would be really valuable. I was also wondering if anyone has contacted the county fair, because there's often info tables inside the county fair, in that big, the ice center, basically, right? They always have that full of tables. I don't know what the fees are, things like that, but, or just sit down outside and buy the cheesesteak truck or whatever.
I'll just add the question about capacity, like I personally have a little more capacity in August than I do in July. I don't know about in July. So if there were a couple of things that felt powerful, like here's if we could get this in, I'm happy to try.
The rest of my July is pretty packed because of my daughter's wedding. But my August is more open, so I could do some notice. I hate to get this ball rolling and then just have it drop for a month. I think at least a few if we can. If we don't do as many as we did in July, at least some.
A trickle for a little while, rather than cutting it off completely.
So we'll try and target a couple meaningful ones and go for quality, not quantity throughout
Yes.
this.
That sounds great.
Would the board like Leah and I to start working on a potential resolution for the board to at least look at at the upcoming meeting?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have that on the agenda on the 22nd. And then, and hopefully, when you talk about drafting a potential resolution, I assume you'd have something, and the discussion could be pretty open in terms of like numbers and terms and things like that, right?
Yeah, I don't think we would even necessarily need to put in a number or a length, but at least to start having discussion of the language and give the board kind of a template of what a resolution would look like to frame the discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Does that sound good to everybody else? Additional discussion on this item. Thanks to everybody who has, thanks to our committee who has made this calendar, which has been a great one, and to everyone who has been getting out there. All right, next. Items related to next meeting dates, board committees and reports. We have some of our listening sessions on here. We have the special board meeting July 22nd, a regular board meeting August 12th, new teacher orientation, oh my goodness, August 13th through 15th. That's already on here. Professional development for all staff, August 20th to 22nd, and PD day for all staff on the 26th. Our annual meeting is also August 26th, 6 p.m. Menomonie High School. First day with buses is August 28th. I know, that feels like we shouldn't be talking about that.
So is August 20th the day that we go there to like pass out the boxes?
I think that's the 26th.
Right.
So just a couple dates for board members. Our new staff luncheon will be Wednesday, August 14th at 11:30 a.m. And that'll be at the high school, I think. We're just ironing out some of the details. So again, August 14th, our new staff luncheon. And then, Brian, when would the handout of, and the opening PD?
That would be Wednesday, August 21st.
So the following Wednesday, oh yeah, there it is, August 21st, 7:30 a.m. Unless you want to do the wellness walk, you could come a little early.
I have never in my life made it to the wellness walk.
Either as a board member or teacher. And just for,
We don't keep track.
you can just pick on. For new board members' information, those things are optional to attend. The PD day, the board has traditionally helped hand out tenure awards, and it's a nice chance to like say hi to teachers in the morning before they start their first day. I attended the new teacher luncheon last year. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool to get to meet some folks. And we should, do you want us to message, Jenny if we intend to be there?
Yeah, we'll put out a separate message with those dates and times
Okay.
with an RSVP. So, yeah, but like you said, everyone's welcome and it's optional. If we know people are coming, we can plan ahead a little bit, but it's pretty open.
All right. So I'd like to propose we take a 5-minute recess before we move into closed session.